What would be your walk-up music?
Man, I couldn't name a song. I'd have to think more about it. Yeah, then again, I mean, I could also go like totally in the ironic direction and like the Baby Shark walk out.
Mommy shark.
Daddy shark.
From
Yeah.
love that. I mean, love that. Would love to come up with like a version of that, like the Scooby-Doo theme song.
Yeah.
I'm Billy Mitchell,
And I'm Megan Metzger.
and this is CTRL+ALT+DEFENSE.
Well, I'm thrilled to be back in the studio. It's been a while. It's good to see you, Megan.
Hey, Billy, I've missed you.
I know. We don't hang out as much as we should. Let's fix that.
We are in the same building. This is a
I
shame.
know, and we barely see each other. It's an honor to be here with Chris Brose. Chris is president and chief strategy officer for Anduril. But before that, before joining Anduril in 2018, Chris was staff director of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he also served as a senior policy advisor to the late Senator John McCain and an advisor and speechwriter for Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell. Very cool people that you spent some time
It
with.
was a great run.
What
Super
was that
fun.
like? I mean, all I can say is, wow, that's pretty phenomenal to spend time with those three people.
Yeah, like I've been incredibly fortunate in my career, and it's something that I'm very cognizant of, right? Like there is such a thing as good luck, and I've definitely had it. I got to work with three phenomenal people. I get to work with phenomenal people now, but I mean, to the ones you asked about, I work for Secretary Powell for the better part of a year, Secretary Rice for 4 years, Senator McCain for 9 years, and they're all different, right? I mean, like I took different things away from all of them. With Powell, it was just the sort of very remarkable sense of leadership that he had, just a very personal and very kind of intimate leadership. I remember back in the way back machine, like 2004, after the Abu Ghraib, kind of reporting came out, he literally cleared his calendar for a day and just walked around the State Department and like went in and out of offices to build morale, just a really classy thing.
Very cool.
Secretary Rice gave me an opportunity that arguably she probably shouldn't have. But the thing that I took from that was just she was willing to take a risk on someone she thought might be capable of delivering. And that has always stuck with me in terms of, being willing to kind of give someone a chance, see what they can do, assume that they're going to grow into a role that on paper, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense that they could do. Doesn't always work out well. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't with me, but definitely took
The
that away.
verdict's still out.
Very much. It is, too soon to tell. And then the thing with McCain, I get asked this a lot. The thing that I loved about McCain is, look, there's a ton of, in Washington, hardworking people and tons of smart people and tons of good, decent people. And there aren't a ton of courageous people, who are actually willing to do things that they believe are right. Whether you agree or disagree with the thing that they're doing it because they believe it's right. And they are paying an immediate price for the thing that they're doing. That's pretty rare. Like I'd love to think that we could get more of that in the city and in the country, but seeing him do that sort of again and again was pretty inspiring.
That's amazing.
That's really cool. I have a John McCain story. I was at a random grocery store in Crystal City in Arlington, and I'm just picking up something, and I'm walking by and I see this guy that looks incredibly lost and in a suit, like something doesn't belong here. And so I stop and I look, and it was John McCain at Shoppers. Yeah, not even a nice grocery store, looking at the biscuit aisle. So that's
I was going to say he was definitely not buying anything sophisticated. His eating tendencies skewed toward like the 8 and 9-year-old child.
That's amazing.
Peanut butter and jelly, hot dogs, donuts.
I legitimately, for some reason, remember it was the cookie cracker aisle. Yeah. Looking for goldfish. I don't know.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's funny. We would do these trips, and fly military air, and you'd have this very small kitchen in the back of a relatively small airplane, and you'd have this amazing, military trained chef who'd gone to culinary institutes. And I mean, these people could create magic in, something that's barely a kitchen, and they'd be whipping up this amazing meal. And he's like, I just want a hamburger. Yeah, just make me a, ham and cheese sandwich. I'm like, they're making sauces. Like he's doing phenomenal work back there. It's just,
I wonder if they loved it or hated it. I hear I have a filet and he just wants a burger. I love that. They're human. They're actually human.
I can relate to that.
Entirely true.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, we have so much to talk about. I'm excited to have you in the studio. I know you and I, you're one of my favorite people to nerd out on, like how to reform acquisition, you name it. But it's been fun watching Anduril. So I know Trey Stevens, and I think I can remember meeting very clearly out in Silicon Valley, sitting like, hey, here's this thing we're starting. It's going to disrupt all the primes. We're going to just totally change the game. And you know him, he's very enthusiastic about it. And fast forward, and you guys are growing like crazy. We're going to get to that. But I want to hear your story, because it's a winding road, but how on earth did you end up day one walking into this organization?
Yeah. So when Anduril was founded in 2017, I was still working in the Senate Armed Services Committee. And, for a long time before that, and to include that time, my focus had really been working with Senator McCain. How do you change the acquisition and procurement process? How do you change technology policy? How do you change the program, right? How do you direct more money toward things that are going to be better for us in the future and away from things that we just need to stop doing? So I took a keen interest on where technology was going, new companies that were trying to get into and it's one of these very kind of weird random things where in the Congress, it's feast or famine. And you get these weird weeks where, you've taken the National Defense Authorization Act out of committee, but it's not yet on the floor. And you just kind of have like a down week, or you got it off the floor, but you're not yet in conference and you just have this like respite. And typically I would just get emails that would just die, right? I just had no time to get to them. I would just kind of triage them out through inaction. And I got an email one day from a lobbyist I'd never heard of, asking me to meet with a company I'd never heard of. And on any given day, I would have just said like
Mark is
I have no time for this. What struck me was the name Palmer Luckey. And I was like, why do I remember that name? And I actually had like a few minutes to do what I never would have done in another week, which was like pop it into Google. It's like, oh, right, Palmer Luckey.
Yeah.
Oculus, virtual reality, Time Magazine.
He's
cover,
done nothing.
Facebook, etc. I was like, oh, interesting. The guy who productized and commercialized virtual reality is starting a defense company. I'll say yes to that meeting. Like, this is exactly the kind of stuff I'm interested in.
If nothing, morbid curiosity.
Yeah. So, Palmer and Trey and, Matt Steckman, my colleague now, all came in. And at the time, it was like a 25-person company, long on ambitions and hopes and dreams, still working kind of first product. But to me, it was just very unlike most of the meetings that I was doing, right? I mean, there were some companies that were interested in defense, but they were primarily commercial companies that the government was trying to sort of, cajole into doing national security work. But Anduril was one of the only, if not the only company that said, like, we are here to work on defense problems. We are a defense technology company. And that stuck with me. And again, fast forward a few months, McCain passes away. I haven't thought of Anduril since they came in. And, I'm now leaving my role, which I had expected to do as soon as, the term was over. And obviously with McCain's diagnosis, pretty clear that this was going to end. So, I start thinking about, well, what in the world do I want to do when I leave the Senate? And I, do what everybody does, right? You talk to friends and mentors and folks like that. And, more than one of them said, there's this company Anduril that's really interesting. Have you heard of them? Like, yes, I have heard of them.
Wait.
And I think at the same time, many of these same people were having the similar conversations with Anduril. I was like, hey, there's this dude, Chris Brose, who seems like wired a little differently and is interested in your kind of stuff. Have you heard of him? They're like, yeah, we actually have. So like after
we
enough
talked about
of this,
that meeting and nothing happened.
I talked to Trey and was like, we should probably have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget it. I mean, we had dinner, him and Matt and me, and talked it through. And I came out for interviews. And yeah, we kind of got started under the understanding that we're not really sure where Anduril's going. We're not really sure what you're going to do, but we're going to figure it all out.
That's cool.
And it's been 7 years now. It's been a fun journey.
And now look. Yeah, I love that story. I think it takes a certain like breed of person to have an interview and say, we have no idea what you're going to do. And we don't know what the company's going to do, and say, that sounds like the place for me. Like, that's my MO, but you got to have a little level of risk taking that I think is rare.
Well, I think it's become less rare because I think it's become less risky. I mean, when I joined Anduril, most folks who had the job that I had, I mean, they'd go head up government relations for a major defense company. When I told friends and relatives and associates what I was doing, most of them thought I had joined the circus, which I'd kind of done to a degree.
Different kind of circus.
However, like, I think what's been really cool to watch is more and more people who are coming out of jobs like the one that I had, government jobs, military jobs, congressional jobs. They're going to non-traditional defense companies. They're going to startups. They're going to technology companies. And I think that is very, it's an indicator among many others of how the times are changing. And I think it's become almost established that that's the kind of thing that people are not just willing to do, but excited to do. And it's like an underappreciated reality, but I think that it really matters in terms of like the work that people do in the Pentagon, on the Hill, in the military, and thinking that that's a path for them and that's a thing that they
Yeah.
could be really excited to go do. I think that has really started to change the way people are thinking about the entire kind of defense ecosystem.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I've even seen it over the course of Decode. You know, the number of calls that I get of people leaving government because we have our tech portfolio saying, I want to work for a tech company. And I would say from the day we started, fast forward 10 years now, it it's just tripled.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's great. That's exciting. We want those companies in, and I think you see where they can make a difference.
The flip side that I'd add though is I'm like
It also
literally going.
sounds sexy. We just talked about this with Alex. It sounds sexy.
It sounds sexy, but it's interesting because I'm like literally going through this now with a relatively senior person who's leaving the government, and it's like I need to be very clear with you what you would be getting into because like there's appeal, there's the excitement and fast moving and solving problems, well capitalized, like all the positive things that people associate with it, right? Like there's a defense technology ecosystem. However, on most days, it is fast moving chaos. Things are changing. Roles are unclear. Roles are changing. Like it does take a certain type of person to be comfortable in that type of uncertainty and volatility and dynamism. It is not for everybody. And it's not a judgment on a person's character, right? It's like,
I don't know.
it's an apple or an
not for
orange.
everyone.
It really comes down to what's right for you and how are you wired and what do you want to do. And some people want to do it. Some people are going to fit it and fit the culture and then, sort of thrive there. And, others, it's not for them.
Yeah, it's so interesting because from the outside looking in, it's like you said, Anduril has this idea to create this defense technology, prime in a sense. And it looks like you had this sage wisdom in advance of where we are today, as if this was the way things were going. But you're kind of describing it that it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of figuring it out. But was that journey in terms of meeting the moment where it is today? Because it really makes sense in the way your business model meshes where the department wants to go.
Yeah. I mean, I credit the founders for putting the company on the right trajectory to start, right? Even if that was like relatively general, high level, it was the absolute right vector, right? We're going to be a technology company that leverages, the best in breed of what the commercial industry is doing. We're going to invest our own money in our own capability. We're going to be software defined through and through, even as we're building hardware. And we're going to become or aim to become, a large diversified company working across a lot of different products and programs. Like building the next great defense company. That was the right vision, right? Then the question becomes like, how do we do that exactly? And I think even there, right, we were on the right course. And there's a lot of things that we're doing today that we actually did want to do and we did talk about in the early days. So building, the extra large autonomous undersea vehicle that we're building with the Australian Navy. I mean, it was one of the earliest meetings that I had at Anduril of like, how can we get involved in this? This is going to be the future. The thing that is striking is just how it's happening a lot faster than I think even we would have predicted. And then there's the other side of it, which is just things that we never could have foreseen. They were kind of, not wildly off the course that we had set for ourselves, but by virtue of how we were changing or how the government changed or just some emerging opportunity, we're now doing something that we never could have predicted. And increasingly there's a lot more of those, which is really exciting.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, you talked about, okay, it's fast, it's chaos, it's shifting, all of the things that are exciting about scaling a company. And I actually got a question today from someone in the DoD. Like, hey, do you think Anduril, they're scaling so fast? This is a direct question. They're scaling so fast. Do you think they can keep up? How do you think they're going to pull it off? And there is a world where you scale too quickly and get over your skis, and in a world where it's moving so fast, like how are you going to scale? What is the hardest part of meeting this demand that you have?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's an entirely fair question
Like,
because we are
that's
growing
why
a
I
lot.
don't sleep.
Basically, that's like why all of my pain is internalized. No, so I think there's a couple of answers to it. The scaling question is just the next hurdle that we're clearing, right? And I kind of go back and look at all of the hurdles we have cleared where we got a similar set of questions. So, why does Anduril think it could do this? Why do you think you can accomplish that? Why do you have something to offer on the following? And we've done it consistently, right? So when I look at the scaling problem, to me, it's just the next hurdle we're going to clear. And we've got a lot of sort of empirical evidence to suggest that it's not a crazy belief or bet that we're going to do it. I think the more serious answer is actually how we're approaching all of the different work that we're doing, which is basically treating them as like almost a series of parallel efforts or even businesses inside of the business. So when you talk about scaling, collaborative combat aircraft at the same time that we're scaling production of extra large autonomous undersea vehicles, those are two different teams. They're being run independently. They're both scaling kind of on their own merits and under their own leadership. There are obviously things that we have
Yeah.
centralized and are centralizing
Okay.
where you just have to take a common approach. But I don't think of it as like, how do I scale one thing? It's like, how do I scale a series of things that are also growing exponentially, which is a much more boundable problem and something that, again, I think we have a track record of doing. And the scale that we are now kind of getting to is just the next problem in front of us. But we're building a lot, we're investing a lot, we're hiring a ton of people, we're building the capacity to do this. And the final thing I'll say is that I think what we are scaling is fundamentally designed to be scalable. We are not trying to scale aircraft carriers or ICBMs or things that are really hard to scale. We're scaling things that we designed from the beginning to be simple to build, simple to produce, simple to assemble, and you can hire workforce for that quickly. You can facilitize for that quickly, and we're doing all of those things.
How do you make sure that you keep your economies of scale? If you're, I'm sure there's lots of parallels within all of those product lines of effort that would benefit from each other. So how do you actually make sure you're learning the same lessons and cross-pollinating?
Yeah. So to be clear, they're not completely hermetically sealed, right?
Sure.
And I think that's actually one of the big problems that we see in government where, because of security and classification and other things, you have two parts of the same company that literally aren't allowed to talk or work with one another or know what they're doing. So I think a lot of what we're doing does benefit from commonality, which I view as kind of almost separate from the scalable question. Right? So when you think about what we're doing on the software side, again, something that the founding team got right was fundamentally believing that software is going to be the platform on which we are building all of these different efforts. So what that means is that with each different program we add or product we build, not only are we building on a mature and deployed high TRL software platform, which is cutting years of development off of the program and reducing the risk of it, et cetera, it's also then feeding back data and experience into the software that's making it better for everybody. Yeah. So it actually aids in the scaling. Again, common lessons learned, that's a lot of the things that I have to do and, the leadership team has to do to ensure that, even as we're building these kinds of, divisions inside the company, we're still learning common lessons, sharing, best practices and benefiting from technological reuse or common platforms where we can.
Yeah.
Wait, I mean, so much of what you've talked about to us so far is what you guys are doing on your side, but there's the whole other part of the equation too in the department. And there's a lot of thoughts about where they are in terms of having an appetite or being ready for the types of things you guys are providing and being able to do so in a quick, agile manner. I'm curious how much of it also takes, you guys spending time with the department or folks on Hill and in your former role and really making sure they're ready for the things you're ready to do. Because if there's not a willing or ready buyer or participant on that side, it's all, and not to say it's all for naught, but it's its own challenge.
Yeah, no, it is. It's half the battle, if not more than half, right? I mean, there's
80% maybe.
There's an old joke in government of, what makes a successful program. The first is money. The second is politics. Nobody remembers the third, but it's more important than the fourth, which is technology. Again, equip, unfair, but has a kernel of truth. It's just to say, actually one of the things that attracted me to Anduril was from the beginning, the sort of stated belief that we have to be just as good at the non-technical, non-engineering aspects of the business as we are on the technical engineering aspects. So we can build phenomenal technology, we can build amazing products, but if we haven't actually done the hard work of working with the people who actually own these problems and essentially understanding the market and the customer that we are working with, then it's all for naught. And I've just seen, going all the way back to my time in government, so many companies that just fundamentally don't understand the market that they're in, the customer that they're selling to, and even more than that, the processes with which they go through identifying what they're going to buy, how they're going to spend money, how they're going to buy it. And we can cast aspersions against all of that. The customer's stupid. It doesn't know what he wants. The process is broken. It's all jacked up. It's all the reason that I'm not successful. It's like, that's the game, man. It's not going to change. Totally. You just have to work within it. So that's most of, I mean, that's entirely what I do.
Yeah.
No, I'm not building anything.
Yeah.
God forbid.
Yeah.
I am entirely focused on understanding the problems that they have, figuring out whether we have something or could develop something that would solve that. And then frankly, working with the government because these people also want to work through these
Yeah.
processes
Yeah.
and different communities that they don't necessarily control, but they have to get into alignment with. I view this as much as like helping them work through their own process as it is like helping us be successful as a company.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, you guys have obviously been somewhat successful at this in sort of ushering some of that change and being able to sell and win some pretty big contracts.
Trying.
What's, are there keys to success that you're, acutely aware of, or I mean, it's just kind of taking it in stride and what seems to be working?
It's a great question we could spend the rest of the day on. I mean, there's so many different pieces that you have to get aligned. Um, I think a lot of the time we spend focused on the acquisition system, right?
Yeah.
And why won't the acquisition system buy my thing?
Yeah.
And the answer actually has nothing to do with the acquisition system. It's way upstream in terms of
Yep.
requirement for that thing, whether
Yep.
there's an operational user that has a demand for it, whether anybody has actually put money in the program or in the
Yeah.
budget to buy that thing. So you can do workarounds, you can work through small prototyping things to get something going. And the good news is that's never been easier. But how you really kind of build and deploy at scale requires this, convoluted dance of all of these different communities of interest that you kind of have to get lined up. You need senior level support because
Yeah.
oftentimes when you're trying to do something different or build something that's never been
You
done.
need that top cover.
Yeah, GS13, God bless them, doesn't have the authority to push something like that through. You need someone whose first name is secretary or chief or deputy or
Yeah.
whomever to say, let me own the risk or eat the sins of doing something different. Again, there's
Yeah.
just countless examples of and sort of, things that need to be done to make something that has never been done before happen and happen at scale and go through a process. And I think the thing that's underappreciated, and you know this better than anybody, is the process, as bad as it is, the acquisition system, the FAR and all of it, it basically. And so often you have people who don't actually understand the authorities they have and or are unwilling to use them. And it's just a matter of like, in some respects, like really educating people about what's possible. So a lot of that is work we also have to do.
Yeah.
That's great.
You and I had an opportunity to have a really cool roundtable with a chief of a service, specifically on you have the authorities you need, sir. You just need to exploit them. Not exploit, that's not the right term, but
Use them.
use them.
That's why they're there.
And it's half the challenge. I mean, I could not agree more. We tell the tech companies that come through our program, like, you need to know more about the acquisition system than the person you are selling to. Tech's the easy part. It's the understanding how to navigate and maneuver within that. So if I'm gonna tell you my opinion from the outside looking in, because I've watched a couple of these defense unicorns pop up and leave and people try. And I do think, looking at who you all have hired, you've found an interesting mix that's a little bit unique in my opinion of people that know the building, they know how the systems work. They were the forward-leaning ones inside the building, but that's in all parts. And then blending it with the right technologists that you need, where I think I've seen some companies try to come in like wrecking balls with all outsider views, and there's some beauty in that. But at the end of the day, you don't know how to get that PE line into the palm cycle, like you're gonna struggle. So kudos, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I think it's right. And I think it's the assumption that we always make is we never want to show up and basically have, kind of a one-sided conversation that consists of us trying to convince somebody on the other side that something we've already done is the answer to all of their problems. You have to go in and actually start with questions.
There's
with
an
trying
idea.
to understand the problem. So, everything you said about familiarity with the processes is great, but it goes even further, right? It is familiarity with the operational problems. It's familiarity with what the adversary is doing and getting into the actual sort of threat information. It's understanding not just how are you going to build a thing, but like, how are you going to resupply it? Like, what's the logistics of getting it there? How are people going to work with it and interact with it? So you have all of these kind of exogenous or adjacent sort of problems that unless you solve those or at least come forward with credible answers, that's the thing that's going to kill you. So it's understanding the process for sure, but then all of these other questions, which are the lifeblood of how, a military department or a service actually fields systems and maintains them and uses them and derives value from them. You have to have people who understand that too. And you yourself have to, deeply take those problems seriously, because the government absolutely does, and they're right to, right? I mean, this is life and death, and this is ultimately about, how you use these systems, understand their capabilities and limitations. And, if you don't have good answers for all of those questions, then, you're going to have a pretty rough go.
I had a fun conversation recently with some folks down at the 18th Airborne, and talking about, you mentioned operational context. Like, hey, we're loading up all this equipment onto soldiers. And, for example, you and I have seen, we've been out PC5 with networks. You lay down, you can't open it.
Right.
So, and you can't design solutions if you don't understand even down to that level, like how it's going to be used in the environment that it's in.
That's right.
I think that's so key. And like, I know that you all send folks out even into theaters and to really kind of sit next to folks and understand that problem. Like, how instrumental is that in your strategy?
It's central. I mean, in every area that we want to be present, right? To the greatest of our ability to understand, the people who are going to be using the systems that we're building. What do they want? What are their needs? What are their, frustrations with what they're doing? How would they want to solve the problem better? Again, out of a belief that they understand their problems, but they might not, and usually don't
know what they want.
what the actual right answer is. And if you can break it down to what problem are you actually trying to solve, that allows us to put forward ideas to them that they probably wouldn't have thought of. I think the related problem is also just understanding where these issues are going, right? So, I mean, we've been present in Ukraine since the war started, and we have a group of people that have been in and out of the country, and it's a phenomenal sort of stream of reporting, which is like must reading at Anduril, because they basically are our harshest critics in terms of saying, hey, what you're doing here isn't really going to be relevant. Hey, this issue has changed. This capability is now evolved. You've got to get better. You've got to push. You've got to adapt. And that has made us a way better company, and trying to do that in as many places as we can get that kind of access, keeps us at the cutting edge and keeps us focused on the sort of rapidly changing character of the warfare, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
I have so many questions, and I need to pause and let Billy have a question.
One of the things I definitely wanted to bring up was culture, both as it internally at Anduril and also how that reflects on your work with defense customers. But, earlier this year, a company came out with a really pithy and unapologetic slogan, "Don't work at Anduril," in which you're kind of poking fun, bother come in here if you're not willing to essentially just like work hard and get things done. Sort of akin to like a really good sports program like Alabama under Nick Saban, or Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Like, if you come here and you put in the work, we're going to win, but you have to have that high standard and that work ethic. So I guess taking it back to the internal culture, how is that reflected internally? I mean, we've seen the commercials, but I'm curious what it's like to kind of work inside an organization like that. And then in turn, as you're working with, partners on the defense side, does it turn into better partnerships? Is it, you think lead to a better bottom line in terms of, you guys are putting out products that are going to help America lead and win? Yeah.
So the focus for us is it's actually self-serving, right? At the end of the day, we need to make clear to people what they'd be getting into. Because there's nothing more frustrating than someone who, kind of gets tricked into joining an organization and then realizes that it's a very different situation.
This is not what I thought.
This is not what I got into. It's bad for everybody. So the self-serving aspect of this is, frankly, what we've had the benefit of being able to do and say from the very beginning. We are a defense company. We work for governments. We build weapons. This is not for everybody. And that's fine. If you don't believe in that, if you don't want to do that kind of work or work that hard,
need not apply.
Peace. Like, it's totally fine. Go do something else. Our belief is there's nothing more important than this mission. And we want to attract people who have similar mindset, similar passion, are going to work just as hard, and fundamentally are aligned to the mission and the culture that we're building.
Yeah.
So, that alignment is absolutely key. And then I think what it does is it ensures that, and for what it's worth, that used to be an entirely controversial thing to say, right? I mean, it's like, hey, we're a technology company in 2017. We're going to build weapons for the U.S. government and work on border security in the Trump administration. People like, kindly leave. Or less kindly leave. Now it's like, it's like, cool. It's like, that's a massive shift. So let's just take stock of that. But I think, in terms of the culture, there's a degree to which you do want that hardcore culture. You do want people
Yeah.
who are just going to give it their all, not just because they care about what they're doing and not just because they want to be successful. They want to do well, as the company grows and becomes more valuable. But at the end of the day, because they're participating in a mission where they know what they are building is life and death for somebody. And they're going to work
Yeah.
that much harder and stay that much longer and work through that night. And that is something that you need to attract those kind of people. And you need to be crystal clear to folks like what they are getting into and what this demands. And then, the sort of related challenge that presents is just like managing a group of people who are now in their third year of doing that or their sixth year of doing that. Like, people burn out.
Yeah.
You need to move folks from one thing to the next. You need to be cognizant
Yeah.
of the fact that people are going to work themselves to death because they care about this stuff and look after folks in that way. And, I'm sure we could do an even better job of that, but there's just a degree to which that's the kind of folks we need
Yeah.
to attract. And I think that when we work with the government, that's how they are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't join the military because you want to work 9 to 5 and,
Right.
get paid a lot and, work in cushy places. So I think there's an
Yeah.
appreciation of, these folks are wired the way I am. They see the world the way
Yeah.
I do. They care about my mission. They're going to be here for me and have my back. And, I think it helps also when a lot of the folks who are coming to Anduril have a similar background, right? I mean, they've
Yeah.
served or they've worked in government or they've supported government, and you understand innately, what these people are doing and what the mission is, but also you sympathize with them. And I think that's the thing that I can't emphasize enough, right? Is like these people are working in an incredibly frustrating bureaucratic system. They know how jacked up it is better than anybody on the outside.
Yeah.
And people who sympathize with that and understand that and want to help them navigate through and be effective on the terms that they have to be effective on, those are great partners, right? Caring about the mission is great, but if you can't help me, it's like,
Yeah.
I can't do anything with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You know,
So it's a super important aspect of the
Yeah.
culture we're trying to build.
I'm going to foot stomp. So we're in the business of doing exactly what you talk about there at the end, which is we are trying to help the department change how all these frustrations so that you can move these capabilities fast. And it's
Right.
the gnarly stuff that you talked about. And I say, obviously, we're not as big as Anduril by any stretch, but the people that don't do well are either they don't love the mission. So we no longer hire people that don't love the mission, or two, fundamentally have to believe that it can be different.
Right.
And it's one of those things where you find people know that the government can operate differently, but if they really don't, if they get in there and they say, but that's not how this works, I'm like, but that's the point. And the point isn't that people are doing great jobs inside the government and they're doing what they were hired to do and they're doing how the machine works. And they don't have time to stop and lift their heads up and say, this could be done differently. That's where we have to, if we don't believe in our core that things can be better and we can make their lives better, then we need not show up. Right.
That's
So
well said.
you got me on a thread there. We
Love
were
it.
just talking
Yeah.
about this, but that's the people that, I guess I'll flip the question differently. Who does not succeed at Anduril?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the answer is a lot of people, and for different reasons don't succeed. But I think the common themes are the culture sort of shock of going from, for example, going from government where your career and your life is very structured. Again, whether you're in the military, whether you're a civilian, regardless of the role, you know that if I do X, Y, and Z this year, I can generally expect that, I'll get 1, 2, and 3 in the next year. And this is the career path that I'm on. And then you kind of move to a place where everything is highly dynamic. It's unclear what your role is going to be next year. You're basically doing the thing that is most important for the company that aligns to the superpowers that you have. And that's a hard thing to predict. So again, there are some people who thrive in that, right? And they love that and they're able to kind of work in that uncertainty. There are other folks who just need more structure. Look, increasingly we have plenty of roles with structure, so it's not an either or, and it doesn't make you a bad person. It's just a question of how you're wired.
Yeah.
I think the other piece is going back to what Megan just said, is believing that new things are possible, right? So I think, look, all of us who've worked a long time in government come out with a degree of cynicism. The question is taking that cynicism and turning it into realism, but directing it in the service of like an optimistic future. New things are possible. We can do things quickly. Just because it's never been done doesn't mean it's not possible. And I think there are certain people who just have a hard time getting past all the things you were just saying of why this is going to be hard, why they'll never go for it, why we'll get, railroaded by this process or this office or, this aspect of the Congress. And it's like, yeah, like those are all problems and there's 17 more, but like we've just got to run. So, I think that's two of, the many reasons that folks might struggle, but that's probably the recurring themes. And look, to be very clear, this is hard. I mean, we're trying as a company to do something that I would submit historically has certainly never been done in recent times. So this isn't for everyone, and it should be hard. If it were easy, we would have done this a long time ago, and we'd be a lot better off as a country. You wouldn't need an Anduril. So, and the fact that there are now a lot of other companies trying to do it too is great. It's just to say this is super hard. This is like tier 1 hard problem level stuff, and it's not going to be for everyone. And the culture you need and the types of people you need and the sort of mindset you need, just like the emotional level, right? I mean, I get asked a lot, like, how is it different than government? In government, I always knew there'd be an outcome. Like we would pass a National Defense Authorization Act every single year. It might be an overly long bill full of crappy provisions that passes late, but it's going to pass.
It's done.
There's no guaranteed outcome when you're on the outside, especially in a non-traditional defense company. Nobody cares whether you survive. Nobody is going to guarantee that you make it. It is just like the reward for work is more work. Every year is, an extra mile of a marathon where the pace is getting faster. And emotionally, it's just an incredibly difficult experience. I mean, look, I struggle with this. Where like you bang your head against the wall 99 times, and on the 100th, maybe you get through, maybe you don't. It's just incredibly challenging. And then whatever success you have today is fleeting. You have to fight for it tomorrow and the next day. It isn't for everybody. And there's going to be a point where it's not for me. It's just like, I need to tap out and move away and recuperate. But, it's a phenomenal thing to be a part of. It's an exciting time to get to do it. And it's great to see like an actual ecosystem of folks coming up and doing it. I mean, you were doing this before most of us. So, it's a great time to be participating in all of this.
Yes.
I was building a company. Can we say F-bombs on this show?
Please.
I'll use duck. It's like a duck, 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 duck. Yay! Duck, 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 duck. It's over and over again. And it's that yay that brings you back and going, okay, we're making a difference. We can do it. And man, it's hard.
Hit,
can I ask one last culture question?
Yeah, please. I love it.
When I look at the traditional industrial base, we're not going to go down a whole pathway. We could have a whole episode on this, but they have become the culture, right? They look and smell just like our customer. How are you going to protect what you've built and you're so maniacal about the culture you have? How are you going to protect it and keep it from just being absorbed like every other traditional prime?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, right? Because I never fail to say that, whatever folks might not like about the way traditional defense industry has come to operate, there's a fair amount of that behavior that you can trace back to incentives that the government
we built
created.
that. Yeah, we made them.
It's not to let, the companies off the hook always. It is to say that it's not just entirely for reasons of their own making, right? Like I think a lot of what we have, the problems and pathologies we have in the defense industry is a result of incentives that the government has created, behaviors they've rewarded, and other behaviors they haven't rewarded. So how do we kind of preserve what's great about the company even as we become a larger and larger and larger company? One, I think, is actually just focusing on the things that we know we're going to do in a differentiated way. Like we're not going to chase problems just for the sake of chasing problems that aren't aligned to the things that we think we uniquely can contribute on. Second is like we're going to continue to work the way that we believe we have to work for the sake of the culture. So cost type contracts is a great example. This is not a cut and dry issue. There are times where the government actually has to do a cost plus contract. It does make sense. It should be done way less than they think that it needs to be done. There are times where you need to do it. There are times where, despite all of our attempts to, convince the government that a cost type contract is not necessary, they want to do it anyway. Question then becomes to us, well, do we want to participate or do we want to take our ball and walk away from a potential multi-billion-dollar opportunity? So we've created structures in the company that enable us to do that type of work, but we basically keep it entirely separate from the rest of the company so that it doesn't create like a cancerous infection of the rest of the company and the culture, because the incentives of doing cost type work are perverse. You reward most of the wrong things. You penalize most of the right things. And it is destructive to a company's culture if you just allow this to pervade the entire company. So we will do that work where we have to, where we think there's an opportunity that we don't want to miss, can't afford to miss out on. but we are going to keep it in as, tight of a box as we can.
Very
And we're going to
interesting.
cycle people through so they don't get, kind of overly infected with that type of behavior or mentality.
That's great.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of answers to the question. But to me, it is absolutely possible that you can remain true to your values. You can remain true to your
Yeah.
culture, even when, you're 10 and 20 and 30,000 person company.
I mean, we only do fixed price because like you're paying us for an outcome. You're not paying us for how much, like all the hours.
Right.
We're going to burn it till midnight. That's on us because we're going to get you that outcome. I'm like, pay for the outcome,
That's exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, there's a lot of folks who are coming around on that. And there's a huge amount more that we could do in that, and you've been great in pushing that argument forward, as of others. And I think, where the government can adopt more of these alternative mindsets of buying capability as a service, buying fixed
Yeah.
price,
Yep.
contracts. Again, you probably don't want to bite off a wildly risky multi-year
Yeah.
project that is only going to be useful for the government. Like that's why
Yep.
cost type contracts exist, but they should be, as minimally used as humanly possible.
Preach. That will be the clip that Adam's using. Just me going, preach. He's mean to me.
God, he's the
I know.
nicest guy. We want to be sensitive of your time, but I think we have a couple more rapid fire questions we'll throw
Love it.
at you. We might need to start to book episode 2 because I feel like we barely
do it.
touched
I know.
anything.
I know.
Sequel.
Make it better than the first.
One of the things I really wanted to ask you about, and we could touch on it briefly coming in, is your book, The Kill Chain. I read it back in 2021, I think, when I was founding Defense Scoop, because it was, had some great ideas. And I think it was very influential on how I thought about it. But I wanted to just ask some fun questions about it.
Yeah.
We were talking about it beforehand, and you said you actually narrated, I guess, dictated the audio book, which
So
I've
cool.
always thought is probably one of the most miserable jobs in existence. But you were telling a funny story about, what was that like?
Yeah. So the short version of the long story is I recorded the audiobook in February of 2020. And, a week or so before I had been up in New York City, my son's 10th birthday, family went up there. So, New York City, February 2020, you kind of see where this is going. I came back and I have never been sicker. I don't get sick usually. And I was absolutely like laid out for a few days. I coughed myself completely hoarse. I couldn't get through a sentence without coughing. And I called my publisher and said, look, like I'm in a really bad way. And I know we've got the studio time booked. We booked it 6 months ago. I'm supposed to go in and record this in 2 days of reading, like 2 9-to-5 sessions of back-to-back reading. I don't think I can do this. Like, I think we're going to need to push this out. And basically the answer was, we're on a schedule. Studios bought and paid for and booked. We recommend tea with honey and green apples. So I probably drank 30 cups of tea a day, went through about 5 to 10 apples. Someone like Adam, like Industrial Light and Magic the thing together, because I would like just break at every sentence and paragraph. But to
Brutal.
this day, it's like,
Brutal.
you got to listen to it at like 1.5x because I'm talking way too slow. And my register is about 2 octaves below what I normally speak at. Other than that, it was a phenomenal experience that I recommend to everybody.
I don't believe
I can't wait. I'm going to go listen to it now that I
Yeah.
know this story.
Is it on Spotify?
It is on Spotify.
I'm gonna listen to it on the drive home.
But what speed?
1.5.
Just
at
keep
least.
just
Yeah,
keep
we'll see.
increasing it. You got to go up.
Yeah. But writing a book, it's a tough business.
Yeah.
Is it something you do again?
I would never say never. I found the experience to be like uniformly miserable. And part of it was like I was doing it in my first year at Anduril. And if you'd asked anybody at Anduril at that time, it was like Chris off just writing a book. They're like, how's he writing a book? He's working here all the time. I have a wife and kids who I actually love and want to spend time with. And, that was true while I was writing the book. The biggest challenge for me is, I have friends who can write books by, at the very beginning, laying out an outline and then just like systematically chopping through the writing. Wake up in the morning, write a little bit, wake up the next morning, write a little bit more. Whole thing progresses the way that they outlined it from the beginning. That was not the way this book came together. I found that, with each time I woke up to try to like write a bit, it was like trying to push the object into motion. And just when I started to get a bit of momentum, I'd have to stop and go to work, and it just didn't work. I went through 17 different outlines, if not more. Like the whole thing was just kind of changing as I wrote it. And I was doing it all in an entirely compressed timeline, about 9 to 10 months.
Oh, wow.
While working full time. So the experience sucked. It was pain and suffering through and through. I basically found the only way I could do it was just to take off like blocks of time where like I'd pull 3 days or 4
You're
days at a
like
time.
Bill from Microsoft. Doesn't he just go away for 2 weeks and
Yeah.
think?
I mean, that's the only way it worked. So the sort of answer to your question is, looking back on that experience, no, I'm not eager to go put myself through that again. I keep sort of feeling like I'm a first-time author, and I'm aiming to keep it that way. I fortunately do not have to write for a living.
Yeah.
But look, I do love writing. I'm glad the experience, I'm glad I had the experience. I'm glad the book exists. To the extent that anyone found it useful, that's awesome, because I definitely didn't get into it to become, a wealthy best-selling author, and none of those things. Would I do it again? I don't know, maybe.
Your tunes changed, because I've been in many events with you where you say, I'm Chris Brose and I'm a one time and only author.
I have no plans.
Billy, we're betting on this. He's going to write another book.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a long, long way in the future. Not in the foreseeable future. Again, I never say never.
Yeah.
But I have no
cool.
plans. I have no ideas, and I'm certainly not eager to do it again.
Well, I would buy it. I'm a fan.
It's not a Sherman-esque denial, but it's as close as I can get. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was a good book, and
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts, questions?
No, I mean, I have a million more questions.
Yeah. We always ask everybody one final question, but before we get to that.
No, I was going to ask, what's the most boring thing about you? But then we can do another fun question.
God, the most boring thing about me. I feel like everything about me is boring. I don't have exciting hobbies. I don't like skydive or, cook amazing meals.
Me neither.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, my life consists of working at Anduril, raising my kids, trying to be the best husband that I can be, and like reading when I have time. When I have time, that's what I want to do.
What do you read?
Just kind of be home. I mean, I read everything. And I've been for the past year or two on this like bizarre Middle Ages kick, mostly because I believe that, everyone sort of who focuses on history kind of like stops at the fall of the Roman Empire and then picks a story back up in like the Enlightenment and modernity. And there's like, there's like 1,000 years in between of like
Some secrets in there.
Plague and crusades and kings and, a bunch of other bullshit. But it basically just kind of gets like consigned to the Dark Ages. Yeah. And I find it really fascinating. I've like dug deep into it, reading about the Plantagenets and different dynasties and the fall of Constantinople. And it's super interesting stuff. Ask me another time and I'll give you a different answer, because I just kind of go in like, fits of passion, like into subjects, dive through them, then sort of move on to something else entirely.
And I thought your acquisition nerdiness was your real nerdiness, but we found it.
Yes, it's like, I guess like once a nerd, always a nerd, and it applies broadly across all
just
disciplines.
A sweeping.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
it.
Let's ask the final question.
Let's do it.
We ask everyone this. So if you've watched any of our episodes, you're our first to record after we've recorded everything. Nobody previously had seen episodes before recording, so maybe you've seen this, but we ask everyone, what would be your walk-up music? Going on stage, going up to bat, entering the stadium.
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so this is an important question. Is what am I walking up to? Like if it's like walking into a podcast, that might be different than
but
running out to the Super Bowl or
don't overthink it. What's your walk-in song?
Yeah. Man, this is my problem, is I have like an eclectic taste of music as well. I could go in like the hard rock direction.
Do it.
And something Led Zeppelin or something, kind of 90s rock. Big fan of like, old school 90s hip hop, could go that direction.
So now you're speaking Billy's language. Yeah.
Man, I couldn't name a song. I'd have to think more about it. Yeah. Then again, I mean, I could also go like totally in the ironic direction and like the Baby Shark walkout from, love that. I mean, love that. Would love to come up with like a version of that, like the Scooby-Doo theme song.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to, it's the closest I'm going to get to.
Your kids are probably too old for this, but what was Baby Shark is now there's like this K-pop Demon Hunters thing that's on Netflix.
Lord.
Has music, and it's great music, but it's like I needed to
I've not found this part of the internet yet.
You don't have girls, so that's why.
5-year-old boy, and he's upset. He wants to be one of the Sajid.
10-year-old girls. I got a whole car full of.
If you like Baby Shark, go check out
K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yeah,
done.
But,
don't do it.
Yeah,
Don't do it.
They're like #1 on the Billboard charts. This fictional band for this Netflix movie, but we'll take Baby Shark, especially in this town. 2019 Nats. It's a moment in time.
So it's funny. I mean, not to keep prolonging this conversation. I finished my book and went to Game 4 of the World Series.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's how I
That's a
know
way
when
to
I
celebrate.
finished, because like I was
I
that
love that.
asshole of a writer who was like, I have some more changes. I just a couple more edits. And that was the time where they're like, stop, put your pencil down, walk away. You're never making another change. It was like, cool, I got to go to the World Series anyway.
There you go.
And
That's cool. I love that
I was
story.
really hoping that was the game we were going to win it. And
Yeah.
it turned out not to be true.
No.
But anyway,
And now look at him.
it's a
This was
rebuilding
awesome.
year. Nowhere to go but up.
Rebuilding
Sure.
decade.
Them and the Wizards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm a Philadelphian, so
Oh,
you know,
but
my
let's not
loyalties
even.
are where they are.
Yeah.
You
You,
went
were
through
you a Wawa
This
guy
is
or a
going
Sheetz
downhill,
guy?
Adam. Can we?
Dude, man. Wawa through and through, Eastern PA all the way.
Yeah.
Like
No, you're. I
Grew
got to
up
go
on
to
Wawa.
20 stores just to like hold a barbecue because you can't
you
buy
don't-
beer.
if
at
you
the-
have Wawa, you don't have to go to any other stores. I would eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at Wawa.
Yeah.
and
I-
that's the
I'm
most
not
boring thing
healthier.
about Chris Brose.
No, Wawa all the way.
Yeah. I agree. Can't do Sheetz. Chris, thanks so much.
No, pleasure's mine. Thank you
This was
guys.
great
We'll
fun.
have to
Thanks
do
for
it
Thank you
again.
so much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
we'll
really
do it again
exciting.
for sure.
Appreciate it.